Hello, friends, and welcome back to Fairytales Reimagined. We're looking at the life of Dick Whittington. So, everyday life in the days of the real Richard Dick Whittington, who lived from the year 1354 to 1423 in the late 14th and early 15th century. London was a sharp contrast between extreme wealth and dire poverty, defined by crowded conditions, high stakes trade, and a lack of modern sanitations. Based on the historical context of 14th century London and the popular tale, here in a snapshot is what daily life was like. The reality of the city, overcrowded and noisy. The city was confined within an 18-foot high stone wall, all right, creating a dense population of about 80,000 people in 1 square mile. It was a noisy and unsanitary environment. Streets were dirty and they lacked proper waste management, resulting in foul stenches, particularly in summer. Waste was often thrown directly into the streets or in the Thames River. It was a city of scents and smells. The city was described as a mixture of sublime and scuzzy, featuring both bustling, vibrant markets and polluted, crowded, and dangerous alleyways where the poor often lived. So, danger from animals and disease. Pigs and stray dogs roamed the streets. Plague was a constant threat, with multiple outbreaks occurring during this period. All right. Work and social structure. Apprenticeship. Life for a young person arriving in London often meant starting as an apprentice or a servant in a merchant's household. Apprentices were often mistreated, as depicted in the story of Dick's struggle with the cook in the kitchen. And I will attach that struggle and the book, actually, the Ladybird book, at the end of this video so you can read for yourself. So, the wool and silk trade. The real Dick Whittington was, of course, a successful mercer, dealing in luxury fabrics like silk and velvet for the royal court and the aristocracy. There were merchant guilds. The city was run by powerful merchant guilds that controlled commerce, set prices, and provided a strict structure for trade. Now, the role of women is important here. They were expected to work in the home, for some to run businesses, and a few even working as weavers or shopkeepers. The living conditions and amenities. Housing. The poor lived in cramped wooden framed houses, often with thatched roofs. The wealthy, of course, like the merchant Fitzwarren in the story, lived in a more solid, well-built stone house or castles. Food and cooking. Poor households often lacked ovens, relying on bakeries or shops for cooked food. Fish was common and an affordable food source. Nighttime. At night, the city gates were closed and the curfew bell was rung, with watchmen patrolling the streets to manage safety. Philanthropy and public works. Improvements in sanitations. Of course, the real Dick Whittington was a philanthropist who funded public toilets, like, for example, the Longhouse at Cheapside, and improved sewage systems, which were much needed, and built hospitals and libraries. Upon his death, he left a significant fortune to improve the city, including building Newgate Prison and creating almshouses for the poor. There wasn't much entertainment in those days, so the entertainment was to be found in almshouses or bars. So while the fairy tale tells of a poor boy finding the streets paved with gold, the real Richard was actually the son of a knight and came from a relatively well-off background, although he still had to work hard to achieve his status. So the tale of Dick Whittington, both in its folklore form and its basis on the historical Richard Whittington, offers several lessons deeply rooted in Christian morality, including perseverance, stewardship, and charity. It presents a rags to riches narrative, often interpreted as a parable of faith, where hardship is endured through trust in God's providence. So, number one, we look into stewardship and wise use of wealth, charity and good works. The historical Whittington and the character based on him used their wealth not for selfish gain, but to aid the poor, to build churches, to fund hospitals such as St. Thomas's Hospital. You can find it there in London and its vicinities. And this reflects the Christian principle of stewardship, where wealth is managed for the benefit of community. So, humility in power. Despite rising from poverty to become the Lord Mayor of London 3 times, Dick remains humble and generous, sharing his fortune even with those who are previously mean to him. Example, the cook. So, providence and faithfulness. Trusting God's plan. Dick's journey from a penniless orphan to a wealthy merchant is portrayed as a result of God's providence or provision, encouraging believers to trust that God works for good in all situations. Romans 8:28. Perseverance through adversity. The story emphasizes enduring trials like the cruel cook, poverty, and loneliness, rather than giving up, mirroring the Christian theme of enduring suffering to gain glory. Sacrificial giving. There's the lesson of the cat. Dick's decision to send his only possession, his cat, on the ship represents a sacrificial offering, because you know very well that he was suffering from a rat infestation where he lived in the attic. So it was a great sacrifice for him to give up the thing that kept his peace and cleanliness secure to the family, so that they could go and see whether he can gain from that. So this mirrors the teaching that what is given to God, or in this case, to the service of the voyage and to Fitzwarren's ships, can be multiplied by him, leading to greater blessings. Okay? Turning back and redemption. Now the bow bells can serve as, and did serve as, a call, because when Dick runs away, he hears the church bells telling him to turn again. It's interpreted as a divine call to return to his duty and fulfill his destiny. This symbolizes repentance, the act of turning away from despair and returning to the path of duty. However difficult. Faith in action or works. From kindness to the downtrodden. The story highlights the importance of showing compassion to the poor, as shown as Mr. Fitzwarren taking in the destitute Dick, and even Dick himself showing a lot of charity and kindness to people who are mean to him, and the real Christian approach. This tale emphasizes being honest, hardworking, and kind, which are aligned with the Christian call to live righteously and to serve others. This tale is ultimately a parable of sorts, reminding believers that our present suffering cannot compare with the glory that is to be revealed in us. That's Romans 8:18, according to the Bible. So next time we're going to look into the mysterious character, a character who is often compared to Christ. See you next time. Bye. God bless, and all glory to God.